Well, today we have a passage from Ezekiel that I actually talk about a lot. And one of the reasons is our goal as Catholics is to live our faith in such a way that we show that God is alive. So our faith is the message. Our lives are the message. So I always tell people you don't have to be standing on a street corner and, as the saying goes from the Southern Baptist friends I've had, and do a bunch of Bible thumping. You don't have to do that. But if you are a believer, then you're going to act as a believer. So keeping that in mind, it's going to influence the way you live your life. We kind of talked about that yesterday, and I realized yesterday I didn't read you the verse, but as again, you could go through it. Kind of saw that yesterday because the people had turned from the Lord. They started engaging in idolatry. They actively engaged in idolatry, and that affected their behavior from that point on. And you can rest assured that the idolatry they engaged in was mostly that, or the people who engaged in the idolatry, mostly the rich. The poor probably wouldn't. And we see that when ultimately Babylon comes and brings people into exile. Who did they leave behind? The poor. They took all the rich. I mean, think of it this way, and I know it may seem kind of trite in one way, but one of the things that we recognize is that many people who live in some of the really expensive, very high-priced areas of the country have no concept of how other people live. They just don't. And so many of these people are in the communication industry. So they're in the media and everything else. So if you're living in a $10 million house in Beverly Hills, are you going to have any clue what it's like to be a homeless person in downtown LA? No, you're not. Because you're so far away from that. Just like, have you ever seen the TV show, Undercover CEO? Well, what's the whole point of the show? Is that the CEO it does not get to experience what's happening at the base levels of his company. So this is a chance for him to do that there on the base levels and see how the people at that level live, and it helps him to improve his company. Do you understand? Because the average CEO has no experience of what it's like to live, to actually work on the base level of the company. So we see that. Well, today, drawing on that same idea that by living your life, you demonstrate your faith in God, we have one of the examples I use all the time, and it's the reading today, when Ezekiel is called to move out of the city, pack everything out and move out the city, because I said when he does that, he doesn't have to say anything, he just does that, everyone's going to go, the prophet just walked out of the city. That's not good. And in fact, so why don't we read that, and we'll see that exact passage I talk about all the time. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, you live in the midst of a provoking house. In the version you'll hear at Mass, they call it a rebellious house. They have eyes to see, and they do not see. They have ears to hear, and they do not hear. Why don't they? Because they're not living in faith. For they are a provoking house. As for you, then, Son of man, prepare for yourself the supplies for traveling far away, and travel away in the daytime in their sight. And you shall travel from your place to another place in their sight, so that perhaps they may consider it, for they are a provoking house. So again, what's happening? Demonstrate to them the message I'm trying to give them. That's always our vocation. And you shall carry your supplies outside, like the supplies of one who is traveling far away in the daytime in their sight. Then you shall go forth in the evening in their presence, just as one who goes forth who is moving away. Dig for yourself through the wall. I always thought it was a portal, but he digs through the wall. Before their eyes, and you shall go out through it. In their sight you shall be carried on shoulders, you shall be carried in the dark, you shall cover your face, and you shall not see the ground, for I have appointed you as a portent for the house of Israel. Therefore, I did just as he instructed me. I brought out my supplies in the daytime, like the supplies of one who was moving far away. And in the evening, I dug myself through the wall by hand, and I went out in the dark, and I was carried on shoulders in their sight. And the word of the Lord came to me in the morning, saying, Son of man, has not the house of Israel, the provoking house, said to you, What are you doing? Say to them, Thus says the Lord God, this is the burden concerning my leader who is in Jerusalem, and concerning the house of Israel who are in their midst. So I am your portent. Just as I have done, so it shall be done to them. They shall be taken captive and moved far away. And the leader who is in their midst will be carried on shoulders. He will go forth in darkness. They will dig through the walls so that they may lead him away. His face will be covered so that he may not see the land with his eye. Now, notice he's not saying land with his eye, because that would mean he would be out to sea. No, he won't see the land. What land? The promised land, the land that the Lord gave to them. So you recognize, again, by his actions, because they're not listening to his words. So by his actions, and as I always like to describe it, the people would be saying, the prophet just walked out of the city. That can't be a good thing. And I always describe it similar to, well, this just recently happened, actually. This just recently happened. There was a message sent out, according to the news. I don't know how legit this is, but according to the news, message sent out calling for people to leave the Middle East. So that's not a good sign. Well, in fact, it's a similar story. You know, when you hear, oh, there's a call for people to leave the Middle East, this is not good, and it's a message that's been communicated. Well, the same thing with the prophet. He's done all these things to communicate, change your ways, because remember, these are the chosen people. And it's not just that they are called to live correctly, which is obviously part of the commandments, but remember, they are the vessel that's going to bring the next stage of salvation. They don't understand that at this time. They have no understanding. No one understands that until basically the story of Emmaus and beyond, when people start realizing, oh, this was all part of the plan anyway. So we see that. So that's part of your message by living your faith. So what is the thing that you want to do? You want to make sure you live your message. How do you make sure you live the message of Christianity? Make sure you are people who pray. That is it. Make sure you are people who pray. Always keep that in mind. Prayer is essential to what you do. And if you don't pray, you can act fine, but you're not going to do what the Lord ultimately calls you to do. And sometimes that whole aspect of prayer is more than just, oh, Lord, let me offer you a good day today. That aspect of prayer is looking at your day and maybe seeing some part of your day that you are a little concerned which way you may be going that day. You might be concerned that you may walk into something that may lead you away from the church for the day or lead you into temptation or something like that. Well, you bring that up in your prayer and you ask the Lord, you ask your guardian angel, you even ask if need be St. Michael the Archangel. You ask all these because you have that. And why? Because you want to stay faithful. But understand the difference. Now, we also have, and this is important, we also have the sacraments that help us in all these realities. One of the things people will know is that, I do a lot of reading because I always research my homilies and I go through everything, and I do a lot of reading of what is it the church actually teaches. I do a lot of that. And you will find that a lot of this stuff you see online, which is I'm always talking about, is inaccurate. A lot of it is inaccurate because one of the things that the church calls us to do is to understand each situation. But that's what the sacraments are for. That's what the sacrament of reconciliation is for. It is so important. I told you the other day that when someone falls into sin and then becomes extremely depressed and upset and really upset with themselves and discouraged, and some people will get so discouraged that they will walk away from the church, which, by the way, is one of the greatest tools of the devil. Father Tom DiLorenzo used to say that. Discouragement is one of the greatest tools of the devil. That is pride. Oh, I am supposed to be such a holy person that I fell into the sin and I shouldn't have fallen into the sin. Therefore, I am not the holy person I should be, and I am not good enough for God. That's all pride. All of that is pride. But it's the person who recognizes that he or she has fallen into a pattern of sin and knows the need to go to confession. Why do they need to go to confession? So they can go to communion? Okay, maybe yes. Okay, yes. But so they can reinvigorate their relationship with God, because that's what they realize is their greatest treasure. They don't want to lose that. It's not just say, well, I have to go to confession so I can go to communion. It is, I want to deepen my relationship with God. And always remember that that's what the sacrament of reconciliation does. It just doesn't bring a healing. It brings a deepening of your relationship with God. So, powerful message. I love this story. I use it all the time from Ezekiel. We're going to be back on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We'll be right back right after this. Have you ever wanted to read the Bible but didn't know which readings to check out? Well, how about looking at the Church's daily readings? You can find them at the website of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Just go to bible.usccb.org and click on the date that pops up on that page. There are other options on that page as well. That is bible.usccb.org, and click on the date and you will see the daily readings for your own prayer and study of the Bible. This is a prayerful tip from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. If you're looking for a way to contact the show, there are two ways to do it. You can do it by phone and contact our listener line. Telephone number is 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. You can also email the show at producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. That's producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. Those are two ways to contact the show, and feel free to do that. So again, that's 617-297-7452. You can leave a message on our listener line or send us an email at producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. So we were talking about that whole message and, of course, living your faith and everything else. And, of course, as I always talk about, prayer is essential. Absolutely. And this is one of the great problems in the church, is people are focusing on behavior is essential. Our behavior is, how can I best put it, is influenced by our prayer. And so that's why prayer is important. If you want to keep strong in the faith, make sure you're a people of prayer. And it is so important, but you have some of these groups that will always be focused on on behavior, on action, on this, that, and the other thing. And they will make very general statements. This is the way you have to live. Well, the church doesn't teach that, by the way. Now, when I say that, it's like, that really was a bad example. I'll give you a better example. To clarify, we all have very individual realities in our lives. That is very true. So we have individual realities in our lives, and someone will come and say, well, when this incident happens, this has got to be your response. And one of the priests, I forget which one it was, who was online, and I don't spend a lot of time watching these people because for me it's a busman's holiday, but I'll see a headline and say, oh, well, what's this all about? And but I just don't. I'll say, oh, it's all about this. Okay, like say, for example, one of the big examples is if there is someone you know, for example, who is a baptized Catholic and has to go and is going to get married outside the church. Can you go to that wedding? And they will say, you can't go to that wedding. The church says that each situation has to be judged individually. What are the circumstances? What's the reality? Because one of the things I always do when people ask me the question, regardless of what kind of wedding is, what is the message you are trying to send? Now, the church is saying, the people who make this general statement are saying, well, if you go, then you are saying that the church says that's okay. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because there's a rather complicated situation that you may be dealing with. So say, for example, you've got some relative who's very close to you who's decided to get married outside the church. Maybe they were married and divorced and they didn't get an annulment. Now they're going to get married and they'll say, oh, you can't go to that wedding. It has to be judged individually, because the person, if they know you well, know where you stand. I've discussed this in other situations as well. They know where you stand. They know. But you want to communicate a message that our relationship doesn't change. And that's what's important. But if you fall into that idea, I'm not going to the wedding because I'm not allowed to, what are you communicating? And that's one of the things I always say when people ask me. There's a priest, who was, I wish I remembered what video it is, but obviously I didn't. This priest said that's probably the most common question he gets. Yes, I get that question too. Can I go to this wedding? It could be any kind of a wedding. It could be someone married outside the church. It could be a same-sex wedding. It could be whatever. And my question is, what message do you want to communicate? Because the question of whether or not you approve of the wedding is already known. They already know that. And so the question is, do you want to send the message, my door is closed to you, we're done, you're dead to me? Or do you want to communicate something else? I don't agree with this situation, but I want you to know that I still love you and, that I am always there for you. Whatever. And that's what the church actually calls you to do. It calls actually pastoral ministers, such as what a priest is, to judge the situation individually. And look at the situation altogether. Look at the bigger picture. And when you see some of these people online, no, you can't go to this because the church. No, the church doesn't say that. The church says you have to look at the whole situation. And if you've already communicated to a person you disagree with their position, but you're finding another message that you don't disagree with, we're still going to be friends. I still care, whatever the case may be. This is an important understanding. So you want to be careful of these people who come out with this general statement to you and say, this is what the church says, because it's not what the church says. The church says every situation needs to be judged individually. You're called to do the right thing, but you're called to do the right thing with prayer and asking God's guidance and doing it in a way that communicates the right message. Okay, that's important. And so that's something you want to make sure you do. So that's why prayer is always important. Bring all of this to prayer. And as I said, this is what the church actually teaches. And be careful of these people who say, no, you can't, because you know what? That can turn your position into being like a club. I'm dead serious. It may sound a little bit off the wall, but it really is. I can't go to that wedding because I'm part of the club and the club doesn't want me to go. Well, no. I can't go to that wedding, or I can go to the wedding, but I'm going, you know where I stand on my faith. You know what I believe. You know that I disagree with this situation, but you also know I don't want to send the message to you that the door is closed. And there you go. So you judge it that way, but be careful these people give you, because this blanket disapproval or approval, because the church does not teach that. It teaches people's individual situations are important to look at. That's called pastoral ministry. And a lot of people don't like pastoral ministry because they want people to follow the rules. You can see an example of it in the time of Jesus, when they were on a Sabbath and they were eating grain out in the field, and the Pharisees said, they're not supposed to do that on the Sabbath. And Jesus made it clear, this is not what the Sabbath is all about. Remember, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And he said, no, you judge everything within the context of prayer, guidance from a pastoral minister, which is a priest or a deacon, or even there are lay pastoral ministers. Guidance if you need that, and prayer, and you want to make the decision of what's the thing that you best, not so much what's the right thing to do, what's the thing that communicates the right message. Do you understand? And this is so important. So you want to be careful. And remember, we're kind of talking about what we did at the first part of the show. When we were talking about the actions are important. So you want to communicate the right message for whatever situation. And many of these people online don't have the right message. They follow these rules, and the rules are fine if they're understood correctly. We'll be back right after this. Did you know that Catholic TV offers free apps for both Android and iOS users? Visit the website catholictv.com or your app store to download this faith resource to your device. If you're looking for a way to contact the show, there are two ways to do it. You can do it by phone and contact our listener line. Telephone number is 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. You can also email the show at producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. That's producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. Those are two ways to contact the show, and feel free to do that. So again, that's 617-297-7452. You can leave a message on our listener line or send us an email at producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. We're back. So tomorrow we're going to continue with Ezekiel. It's going to be a very interesting passage. We're going to be looking at Ezekiel 16:59 through 63. And it's going to be a very powerful passage from the Lord about people breaking their covenant, but what is coming in the future. It's probably one of the verses that Jesus used in Emmaus. So we're looking at that coming up. It's very powerful. Again, very powerful prediction and everything else. Ezekiel is a great book. I really enjoy it. So we're going to be back tomorrow for the last show of the week. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed week, and we'll see.
Yeah. You know the real is back. Father Carr Chaplain from the city of champions, dropping daily reflections coming straight from the field. The raw truth revealed for the strong-willed. It's the Greatest Act of Defiance podcast with your host, Father Carr, a message built to last. The Greatest Act of Defiance podcast. That's right, the Greatest Act of Defiance. Word up. Word up. Word up. Word up.
The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.